Okay.
Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom meeting pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being live-streamed on the CCTA website. The chair will call upon members, staff, and other speakers by name. Please speak clearly and state your name before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Members participating by Zoom wishing to speak should physically raise their hand and unmute their mic when called upon. Members should remute their mics when done speaking. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the Raise Hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. A 30-second warning will be provided. After 3 minutes, staff will lower their hand and mute their mic. Participants via phone will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received in accordance with the COVID-19 Special Notice for Public Comment Guidelines are printed on the meeting agenda. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Okay, thank you. Christina, please call the roll.
Yes, Chair Butt. Chair Butt,
Here.
Vice Chair Geringer,
I'm here.
Committee Member Arnrich,
Here.
Committee Member Nowak,
Here?
and Committee Member Thorpe. Committee Member Thorpe? I guess it's not here. Okay, I have all members present except for Committee Member Thorpe.
Thank you. The next item is public comment. Have we received any public requests for public comment?
No, we have not.
Is there anyone now wishing to speak during public comment on an item that is not part of the agenda? If so, please raise your hand and we will call on you.
I'm not seeing any hands raised for public comment.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the election of chair and vice chair for 2021. Are there any changes or comments from the committee? Are there any comments from the public? If so, please raise your hand.
I'm not seeing any from the public.
Okay. Do I have a nomination for chair and vice chair?
Chair Butt,
Yes, Director Geringer.
I would like to nominate Newell Arnerich as chair and Sue Nowak as vice chair.
Is there a second to this motion?
Second.
Okay.
I was about to say, I'll second it too, but that just seems self-serving.
A little weird, but yeah, okay.
Okay. So I guess we can take these as these as one motion. Call the roll. So call the roll, please.
Okay, Committee Member Arnrich,
Yes.
Committee Member Nowak,
Yes?
Committee Member Thorpe. I saw him come in.
Yep.
Aye.
Thank you. And Vice Chair Geringer
Aye.
and Chair Butt.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously with all members present.
Okay.
Congratulations.
At this time, I'm going to turn the gavel over to Newell, and he will take the next item.
Well, Tom, first of all, thank you, Teresa. And congratulations to Sue as well. Tom, thank you for the past 12 months. You've had all your meetings except for your very first one have been on Zoom. And so you have taught us how to do this. So thank you for your leadership, and thank you for all the work and your passion and your voice for transportation improvements. And this will take us to the consent calendar. And the next item on that, is there anybody in the audience or anybody who's made any comments, Christina, who would like to comment on consent calendar or pull an item?
I have not received any public comments.
Great. Is there anybody on the commission who would like to remove an item for discussion or any comments? Seeing none, is there a motion?
So moved.
And second by Geringer.
Moved by Nowak and seconded by Geringer. Christina, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Committee Member Butt,
Yes,
Committee Member Geringer,
Yes.
Committee Member Thorpe,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nowak,
Yes.
and Chair Arnrich.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously with all members present.
Great. Thank you, Christina.
You're welcome.
This takes us to our regular agenda items. Item 5A is approval of a new countywide at-large appointment to the Countywide Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And Colin Clark, I think you're going to present this item.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. So I'm the staff liaison to the Countywide Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee for the Planning Department, which in the next year will provide valuable input on transportation safety to move toward Vision Zero to eliminate fatalities and severe injuries, shaping an assessment of countywide pedestrian needs, active transportation, review of project level complete streets policy compliance with the MTC resolution, and countywide micromobility policy. So the CBPAC has 2 citizen vacancies that are to be appointed by the authority. One for someone familiar with issues related to people older than age 65, and also issues related to people with disabilities. And a second vacancy for someone familiar with issues related to youth. Authority staff intends to fill the vacancies. We conducted a recruitment in January and received 3 applications before the deadline. The announcement was also made via social media and in a number of different committee meetings to try to spread the word. And 1 application was received for the youth representative position, and 2 applications were received for the representative for people older than 65 and people with disabilities. So the applications were provided to the committee members in advance of the meeting. And today I'm pleased to introduce to you 3 residents who will each have 2 minutes to give a verbal summary of their background, qualifications, and interest in serving on the committee. And then after each applicant has been given 2 minutes each to address the committee, I'll provide some additional comments regarding nominations prior to asking the chair to open up for a question and answer period. So first, I'd like to introduce Marjorie McGuee, who is an applicant for the CBPAC member role, representing seniors and people with disabilities. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for the opportunity to meet with you today. I would like you to imagine for a minute if suddenly you could not get in your car and drive across town to, say, an appointment or to run a basic errand. Imagine that you couldn't take your bicycle to get there, but instead you had to be dependent on a wheeled device, such as maybe a wheelchair. I found myself suddenly facing that predicament a few years ago after having spent many years enjoying all the bike trails and sidewalks and driving around town in a car. And all of a sudden, I saw our county in a very different way. What I discovered was that often I couldn't get a simple distance as maybe 2 blocks away from my home, or maybe a mile away, because using my wheelchair, I had to go maybe about 4 miles out of my way. And I started asking why was that, and started looking at what were the factors around accessibility for a pedestrian or somebody using a wheeled device. And through that, I got involved in learning about ADA and PROWAG, and got involved in other aspects of our county's transit, because I also became very dependent on taking the bus system. And as a result of that, I started having some harrowing experiences. Sometimes I was just amazed that I didn't get killed. And so I became more and more aware of what would it take to make this area more safe and accessible for people involved in seniors and seniors as well. So that's why I'm here. I would like to be a part of the solution in helping the group think about accessibility, not only from bicycle perspective or just normal pedestrian, but also what happens when somebody is disabled or maybe a little bit slower or frailer than the average person. So my goal would be to bring a stakeholder voice and perspective, and to help the committee by being a collaborator. I have a professional background in program management and have been involved in a lot of planning efforts in the area. And so I'm aware of how the systems work. So thank you for your time and your consideration.
Great, thank you, Margie. And so secondly, please feel free to give me the accurate pronunciation of your name, but I'd like to introduce Sohaila Bana, who is an applicant for the CBPAC member role, also for the position representing seniors and people with disabilities.
Good morning. My name is Sohaila Bana. Good to be here. Thanks for the opportunity. I've been on the other side of what Margie described. I'm an engineer with PhD in electrical engineering from Cal. I worked in industry, academia, and nearly the past 20 years at Caltrans. I've been involved in design of ramps, following the ADA improvement that Caltrans has been doing extensively, watching for every little thing, from the height of the push button to make sure it is accessible to the people on the wheelchair, to the slope, to the signals. Recently, we've been using hybrid flashing beacon. Different cities have been using it. So I've been totally involved in that aspect of it. So I would like to use my professional background in this capacity. Also, as a citizen, I would like to enjoy it. When I would travel to Europe, I was impressed by how people use bikes and rely on them heavily for transportation. In America, that's not the mainstream way of life. Fortunately, grassroots movements have started, and the governments are joining, such as this committee, and I'll be honored to be a part of it. I think it's excellent. It's good for climate, good for reducing pollution, for mental health, physical health. That's why I would like to be involved, and especially as a woman of color, I think I would add a voice to it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And so our third applicant and candidate is Lamar Karimi. Please correct me with the pronunciation, who's an applicant for the CBPAC member role representing youth. So this is the other vacancy.
Yeah, you got the name right. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Lamar Karimi. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today for one of the vacant positions on the Countywide Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. In May of 2020, I graduated from San Jose State University's Mineta Transportation Institute, where I completed my Master of Science in Transportation Management. The curriculum at the Mineta Institute covered an array of subjects ranging from policy and regulation, the rise of intelligent transportation systems, and funding and finance, whether it be on the federal level with policies such as the FAST Act, which hopefully we're due for renewal for under the Biden admin, whether it be on the state level with SB1 with Jim Beal, or even on the local level with RM3. In terms of my specific experience in transportation, I've been a major advocate for various projects during my time when I resided in Alameda County. This includes Vision Zero with the incorporation of yellow markers at multi-lane crossings, adding buffered bike lanes, and just adding more lighting when applicable. Another area of interest for me, and I've been another major proponent of, is the Dunbar and Rail Corridor. But there, I've been trying to see like if funding is financially possible. But beyond that, it's just an important thing of critical infrastructure connecting the East Bay to the Peninsula, where we have an imbalance of jobs and housing. Now, when it comes to youth in this community, students have been in virtual learning for almost a year now, and that's likely decreased demand for active transportation. However, many schools, as we know, are expected to come back to physically in person by the end of this month to take advantage of the governor's $6.6 billion aid package. So at this point, this crystallizes the importance of active transportation more than ever. And as a relatively new member to the Contra Costa County community, I want to be part of the solution, making my community better. And I think this is a great opportunity to make it so that our students and youth take advantage of these active transportation modes. Thank you, and I yield the rest of my time.
Great. Thank you all. Thank you all for the applicants for the interest in serving on the CBPAC. Really appreciate the time that you put into the applications and this entire process. So to the chair, 2 different nominations should be made, one for a representative for youth and one separately for a representative for both people older than age 65 and people with disabilities. And it can be done under one motion, or it can be done under 2 separate motions. And then the recommendation of this committee will be brought to the full board on March 17th for final approval. And the individuals that are appointed to the CBPAC at that March 17th board meeting would then be invited to attend the first meeting of the CBPAC, the next meeting on March 22nd. And I'd like to now ask the chair to open it up to the committee members and ask any questions they may have for the applicants prior to making nominations for the appointments. Thanks.
Colin, thank you so much. And also thank you to Soheila, Margie, and Lamar for taking the time to do this. This is a great role. You're all absolutely outstanding, some of the best people we've seen. So I will open it up. Are there any questions of our applicants from our APC board members? Comments from anybody? Sue?
I just wanted to ditto your comments, Newell. I really am so impressed with the 3 applicants here. So knowledgeable, coming from different perspectives, but all 3 of them would be great assets to the committee. So I just wanted to ditto your comments on that.
Absolutely. Marisa?
Basically the same thing. And, I hope that all 3 of them eventually end up on some commission or committee within the transportation arena. Just incredible background and experience that you would bring to all of this. So thank you for applying.
Yeah, I wish we could appoint all 3 of you, but unfortunately we can't. So it's any comments or questions from the public on this? Christina, do you see anybody there?
No, I don't see anybody from the public with comments.
Okay, great. Thank you. So is there a motion? Sue?
So I'm just going to give this from my perspective. Obviously, I'd like to nominate Lamar for the youth position. And this is coming from a recent discussion I had on the second nomination. So I'm a diabetic and wear a insulin pump and glucose monitor and so on and so forth. And I always find that the companies always look at it scientifically and not from the user's perspective. And I've been spending some time giving my feedback on a user perspective. And so from that perspective, I would like to nominate Margie for the position because I think that's an important role from a user's perspective.
Thank you. Tom?
Well, I don't know whether we need a substitute motion or what, but I want to nominate Soheila Bana. I know her. She served on boards and commissions in Richmond and done a lot of hard work. And I think either candidate would be outstanding. But we do have a choice, and I think we ought to consider both of them.
So thank you, Tom. So nominations, as I recall, work this way. The first nomination gets voted on. If that doesn't pass, then we go to the second one. It does not take a second for a nomination. Everybody fine with that? Any other comments? Okay, so Christina, if you will call the roll, and the first nomination by Vice Chair Nowak is for Lamar and Margie. If you will call the roll on that, please.
Point of order. I wasn't sure how to do this, but I think what I should do is make my nomination as a substitute motion so that it does get voted on. Otherwise, it won't come up.
Well, yeah, it would only
So
be.
my substitute motion would be Karimi as the youth representative and Bana as the senior representative.
Okay. Yeah, Tim, and then Tyrion.
Chair Arnrich, I would just maybe recommend maybe you do the youth one as its own motion, and then do the senior and disability one separately.
Okay, that makes sense. Tom and Sue, is that okay? Let's
That's
do
fine.
separate those.
That's fine.
And then what we can do is we'll do Lamar Karimi first. So Christina, would you call a roll on it for a youth advisor to be Lamar Karimi?
Arnrich, Chair Arnrich, do we have a second on that? Did committee member Butt second that motion?
We did not. I mean, nominations you don't need to, but if we want to do for nominations, is there a second for that nomination?
Second.
Okay, second by Teresa, and a first for Tom to appoint Lamar Karimi as the youth commissioner. Christina?
Yes. Committee Member Butt,
Yes.
Committee Member Geringer,
Yes.
Committee Member Thorpe,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nowak,
Yes.
and Chair Arnrich.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously with members present.
Okay, and then former Chair Butt was making a nomination to have a separate vote for either Bana or McWee. Is it please the committee to basically call, are we making one motion for this, or are we just asking who are you going to vote for? Or like we do with the mayor's conference? How would you like to do this?
We could do a roll call just like we did just a moment ago. I guess we can do two separate roll calls.
Or Newell, what you're suggesting is that we go around the way that at mayor's conference and say the name of the
Right. Yeah, there.
Okay.
voting for. I don't know if that's standard process with CCTA.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
We probably should take a vote on the first motion. And then if that doesn't pass, then we would go to the second motion.
Okay.
So,
There aren't motions on the floor right now, right? They moved.
right. No. we
Well,
just-
there's two nominations, yeah. So we have the nomination from Nowak and then the nomination from Butt.
Oh, I thought they removed them because we separated them and they would need to make them over again. I know it's probably just a
Right.
procedure, but
You can do that too. Yeah.
Okay.
And
So,
If you want to start over.
I'll move my nomination again.
okay, so your nomination is to appoint Margie McWee.
Yes.
Okay, is there a second to that?
I will second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Tom?
And my substitute motion is for Sohila Bana.
And is there a second for that? There was not a second, so we will go back to the first motion. Christina, would you call the roll call, please?
Yes. Member Butt,
Yes.
Member Geringer,
Aye.
Member Thorpe,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nowak,
Yes.
and Chair Arnrich.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Great. Congratulations, Margie and Lamar and Sohila. Thank you so much. You could tell our problem was if we had three positions, we would have appointed all three of you. we hope to see you again. There are some other opportunities directly on our committee for other appointments. So I encourage you to apply for those. And we value your time and effort and look forward to seeing all of you again. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And especially thank you, Mayor Butt, for your trust and nomination. I appreciate it. Have a good day, everyone.
Great. Thank you.
Congratulations, Margie.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all for your consideration. I'm excited.
Thank you. All right, this will take us to item 4B, and this is a legislative update, and Lindsay Willis is going to lead us off. Good morning, Lindsay.
Good morning, Chair Arnrich and committee members. Congratulations on your appointment to chair. This morning, we have both our state advocate, Mark Watts, as well as our federal advocates, Jason Tai and Gus Maples, with us to give an update on what's happening at their respective state houses. So I know Mr. Watts has another appointment this morning, so I'm going to let him go first this time and share with us what we need to know at the state level.
Thank you, Lindsay. Appreciate it. Congratulations, Chair Arnrich, and it's been an honor working with you, former Chair Butt. I appreciate the confidence you've shown in me. Today, I've got a couple of legislative items I want to discuss with you. A brief update on the Secretary Kim's climate action plan that they're developing. And then I want to close with a little bit more in-depth discussion overview of the COVID relief discussions that are underway at the CPC and across the state. So first, in legislation, I'm not going to give you bill numbers here, but we're sorting through, or Lindsay and I are both sorting through several bills that have been introduced that would authorize the extension or the continuation of some form of virtual hearings and virtual meetings. The reason I'm not bringing them to you yet, because I'm still going through to make sure which ones come closest to what would be appropriate or what I understand would be the desirable by the authority management. So we'll be coming back to you with some recommendations in the near future on that. In addition, there's a couple of bills I did want to highlight specifically that are transportation related. The first one is AB 604 by Assemblymember Daley. You may recall the last couple of years, there have been a couple of attempts to redirect SB1 resources to other purposes, including last year redirecting the interest earnings from the RMRA, which is the Road Maintenance Rehabilitation Account, central holding account for SB1. This bill by Mr. Daley would absolutely cut that off by continuously appropriating the interest earnings from that account, from those new tax resources to the SHOP program and to maintenance activities. Local governments have control of their local interest earnings from that are allocated to them, and we think it's only fair to do the similar thing at the state level. Secondarily, Senator Wiener has introduced SB 339, which continues or would continue the legacy of Senator DeSaulnier in establishing the Road User Charge Technical Advisory Committee. That is due to expire in a year or so, and this bill would extend its life and direct some further studies in moving towards potential road user charge or other substitute for the gas tax in the future. Finally, a bill I think may be of more note to management, but of interest to the board, is AB 1499. This was one of the more recently introduced bills, and it would extend the state and regional design build authority. That is due to expire in 2024, and rather than wait until next year, the member who is the author of the current structure is now proposing to extend it indefinitely. I'm probably surprising Jason and folks, because California is still experimenting with design build, while probably every other state that they're involved with has a full range of authorization in the design build and CMGC area. We have to go tiptoe through past the graveyard to keep it going year to year. So those are bills I wanted to bring to your attention. Now I would like to turn briefly to the Climate Action Plan. So in 2019, Governor Newsom authored Executive Order N1919, and he also followed up with one in late 2020. 7920 is the number of that one. Taken together, they basically direct Secretary Kim and his operation to develop a climate action plan whereby transportation dollars that are available to state agencies, in other words, the I-TIP, for example, is available to Caltrans and can be influenced by the Secretary's office. It would direct the Secretary to come up with a plan that would gradually move projects more in line with more flexible mobility than the internal combustion engine and vehicles. So we're waiting anxiously to see the release of that. It's due sometime this month, and then it will be available for public comment at that point in time. And then the plan would be to provide it to the governor in July of this coming year. So we're anxiously awaiting it. I've sat in on a couple of outreach efforts undertaken by the Secretary's office. They are coming up with a plan I think could be embraced wholeheartedly by state and local agencies alike, but we'll have to see what the final looks like. Finally, I want to give you a brief overview of the Coronavirus Relief Act of 2020, which was enacted in late December at the federal level. It provided $10 billion for states, transportation departments, of which California has been told that their apportionment would be $912 million. That apportionment number was released in mid-January, and since mid-January, regional agencies and the state have been engaged in discussions. The commission has conducted 2 workshops trying to figure out what's the best means to allocate the funding. What seems to be emerging would be a continuation of how FAST Act funds have been allocated in the past, which basically sorts out to be 60% going to the state and 40% allocated to regional entities around the state for further allocation to local agencies. The uses that these funds can be put to include revenue backfilling and revenue losses at the state and local levels. If we've experienced significant drop off in VMT and therefore gas tax revenues in some areas of the state, then this money could be used to backfill that. It can also be used for maintenance, operations, and staffing, as well as it can be used to assist toll agencies that have experienced toll reductions due to the COVID responses. I think what's going to emerge would be probably something along the lines I mentioned, the 60-40 split. And that would result in nearly 550 million going to the state, principally for shop and maintenance activities, and about 360 million being distributed amongst local agencies. So the commission has had 2 workshops, as I indicated, and at their upcoming March meeting on the 24th and 25th, staff will distill the input from the workshops into a recommendation for the commission to consider. I've not heard whether they're going to share that in advance, so that there could be a little bit more spirited food fight between regional agencies and the state. But I would anticipate that definitely we'll see it in when the agenda comes out a couple of days before the hearing. So that completes my overview, and I look forward to working with Lindsay and Tim on trying to figure out how to get the most money for Contra Costa out of that COVID relief. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Really well done. I love your background. I wish I was there with you. Are any questions, Mark? Comments? Okay, Mark, thanks for the update. We really appreciate that. Lindsay, you gonna introduce?
Yeah, I'm gonna let Gus Maples and Jason Tai share an update on anything relevant we need to be aware of happening at the federal level right now. Sounds pretty busy. So Gus, Jason, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gus Maples. We had some good virtual meetings since our last APC meeting with the chair and vice chair, and introducing Tim as the new executive director. Lindsay was also able to join those meetings. So got to talk to the entire House delegation for the Contra Costa area. And that was not in person, but positive conversations. So we're working on some follow-ups with the congressman's staffs for the FY22 appropriations process, pursuing support for build grants and low-no emission bus grant support, as well as just some more local funding ideas. Speaking of appropriations leads me into the earmark conversation. Y'all may have seen in the news recently, just within the last several days, both the House Appropriations Committee as well as the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee have announced that they will be resuming earmarked projects. We're in the very early stages of determining scope and eligibilities for that. We do know that nonprofits and public agencies, local governments of that sort will be the primary recipients. But I was on a call yesterday with some appropriation staffers to get more information. They're still determining sort of which buckets, for instance, within the Federal Highways Administration, which projects may be eligible that they're going to pursue there. So we're monitoring that, and we'll be in touch, but also working with Lindsay and Tim on some ideas to pursue a couple of projects within the county. There will be more guardrails around this time because of some of the prior scandals that were associated with earmarks and kind of led to their demise. But like I say, as more information comes out about what information will be needed, we'll definitely be on top of that, because it's a great opportunity for the local level. Other discretionary grant opportunities that come along through the normal appropriations process, I wanted to highlight some of those as one is live right now, or two are live right now, and another that I have in mind should be coming up for applications any day now, within the next probably couple of weeks at the most. That one is the Build Grant, which a lot of y'all are probably familiar with. Local units of government all the way up to state DOTs are eligible to apply for that. It awards up to $25 million in federal resources and can go to a variety of different modes of transportation. It's just a great opportunity to get federal funds to pursue local or regional objectives. The Biden administration is putting more of a focus on racial as well as environmental justice in how they are evaluating applications for both Build and another grant, the Infra Grant. The Infra Grant is live right now, similar to Build, although larger in scope and size, and it has more of a freight or multimodal focus. But both of those definitely have an emphasis on what is the impact to minority communities, as well as what is the environmental impact and reduction of greenhouse gases. Another grant that we're also supporting through the appropriations process is called the Low-No Emissions Vehicle Program. That is currently live for application and is funded at $180 million this year. Individual project awards can range based on the size of the project. And it helps with the purchase or lease of low to no emission vehicles, also that use advanced technologies for transit revenue operations, or supporting equipment and facility procurement. This is a great federal opportunity to help meet some of Governor Newsom's standards for the zero emissions targets coming up. And outside of that, just kind of what's going on this week. The House last week passed their version of the COVID $1.9 trillion relief package. That includes approximately $350 billion for state and local governments, which had been left out of the last package. The Senate is modifying it to an extent. There will be a long amendment process once the Senate begins debate on that bill. Could run all the way through the night, but they're expected to take it up today. And that package also includes $30.4 billion for transit, which is a great increase over the previous iterations of COVID relief packages from Congress. But the goal is to get through that as soon as possible, passing it with only a 51 vote majority based on the budget track that the Senate Democrats chose to take to fast track this, if you will, and get it on the president's desk before unemployment benefits expire in the middle of the month.
Great, Gus. Jason, anything else you wanted to add, or?
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate. And first of all, congratulations, Chair and Vice Chair, for the APC. And also, I would want to point out that Chair Geringer and the Vice Chair Kelly did a fantastic job in the virtual visits with Congressman Saunier, and make a specifically pertinent point. And I think, Tim making the rounds, he really hit the ball out of the park as the new CEO. So hats off to him kind of driving this process with Lindsay as number 2. So really appreciate all that. One thing I would want to say is that there are a number of different things flowing. We, as Gus had laid out, I mean, this first 100 days will be very, very busy. And so all of these things that we have discussed, both Tim and Lindsay have been extremely proactive in laying out a strategy with respect to the earmarks, with respect to the projects, and to fine tune them in a way that will hopefully best position CCTA for some of the funds coming down the pipe. So with that, I'll yield back the rest of our time. Thank you again.
Great. Thank you, guys. Very exciting things at the federal level. Earmarks. Wow. Nancy Pelosi had a big one in there for her. But earmarks were something we were all used to. I know in Danville, we were lucky one time. We asked for $560,000 on an earmark. We got $5.6 million. So you know what? We feel lucky. But yeah, exciting things. And the reality is, if you saw the report yesterday, nationwide sort of a C- on infrastructure projects. That's something we've all been talking about. And keeping us as a country at the forefront of innovation and stuff, you got to have the infrastructure. And both California, Texas, and other places, weather, power, everything is showing our frailty. So, an opportunity for all of us to find those dollars and make some good decisions. Any questions? Or yeah, Jason, please.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Just one point, because I do want to emphasize this, because this really shows the leadership and the proactiveness of CCTA and its leadership and the board. And that is your fantastic Congressman, Mr. DeSaunier, who's just been a tremendous champion, obviously, for so many parts in this district, is planning to drop an individual bill on clean corridors, which is essentially an EV charging infrastructure package. Tim has been very, very proactive, both in terms of kind of an EV readiness plan, which I would defer to him and the rest of the team on. But I think it really well positions some of the policy positions that Congressman DeSaunier will be pushing to kind of get counties who are already at the forefront available for funding should this entire package come into law, which, fingers crossed. And we're looking at several $1 billion. It's a very, very significant tranche. So with that, just wanted to make a point of that, Chair. Sorry.
That's great. Good. Thanks for that update. Tom Budd?
I think we all anticipate with the new administration that a lot of funding opportunities that have been foreclosed for a while will be opening up. And so I would appreciate if there are any of these funding opportunities that the applications for which need to be initiated at the local level, meaning the city level, could you pinpoint those and maybe notify all of us so we can get it out to alert our cities?
Great. Thank you. Tim?
Yeah, I was just going to comment on that. So Commissioner Butt, we actually send out all the grant opportunities through SEAC. And so all of your local staff get no notifications of all the grant applications and so forth. So CCTA does early. So Jack Hall's our liaison there. And so we work really closely with them to make sure they're aware of all the federal and state funding opportunities. And then just to comment on Mr. Ty's comment about the EV readiness plan. So Peter Engel and CCTA staff, we've been working really hard on preparing an EV readiness plan, and that was approved back in 2019, 2018. And we are looking ways to fund that plan. That plan obviously really aligns with the direction of the administration, is the direction that the governor wants to go in terms of climate change. And so we're positioning that plan for funding both on the state and federal side. And that plan has a number of things in there in terms of what infrastructure is required for EV charging, what's required of the grid management by PG&E, as well as workforce development needs and training needs to be able to handle, high voltages and electric vehicle charging for light, medium, and heavy duty vehicles. And so we're positioning that study really, really well and developing an ask around that through Congressman DeSaulnier, as well as some of our other federal delegation. The other opportunity that we're really focused on is with Vision Zero, walking and biking and safety, as well as transit priority and improving traffic flow. We're also putting together a county-wide smart signal program that we want to bring to the entire county, so that way we can have the funds to upgrade this necessary local infrastructure to really meet a lot of the goals of the authority relative to transit, Vision Zero, reduce emissions. And so that's one of the other priorities that we're working on with Jason Ty and his associates with this for the federal delegation.
Great, thanks, Tim. Tom?
For anything relating to EV charging, don't forget our partner MCE, which serves almost all of Contra Costa County, and they're very involved in that too. So any grant applications, they would be a great partner.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you. Any other questions, comments for Gus or Jason or federal advocates? Teresa?
No, just continuing the sort of love fest, if you will. Thank you to Gus and Jason and Lindsay and Tim and Peter, everybody who had a part in making for a successful advocacy trip. No trips to Washington, D.C., but I felt that we came away with a lot of good continued relationships, and Tim did a great job making sure that everybody was very clear about our priorities. And so I just wanted to second, third, and fourth all of that. Thank you.
Great. And thank you, Teresa, for being our representative in that as well. Okay, seeing no further comments or questions, thank you for all the updates, Lindsay, and we look forward to as things move forward, and hopefully we have some great successes this year. So this will take us to item 4C and our 5C. I lost track. Is it 4 or 5? It's 5C. Thank you. And this is our mid-year budget update, and we're being asked to recommend approval for this to go to the full board. And Brian Keller will do the presentation. Brian, good morning.
Good morning and congratulations, Chair Arnrich. And I look forward to giving you a presentation on the mid-year budget. Just give me a second while I share my screen here. The budget process starts with all staff. And so what I'm going to do is just do a quick overview on how the process starts and all the people that are involved. So as you guys all approve resolutions throughout the fiscal year, we have resolutions that go over multi-fiscal years. And so what I've done this year, what you probably saw last night on the PC, there's a lot of changes to the allocations for a number of the pass-through agencies on the sales tax information. And then also with all of the contracts, I had staff go through all of their contracts and make some resolution adjustments, take a look at what's still outstanding, what they can close. And so that's probably the long list you saw earlier on the consent calendar as well. So our typical budget process is the continuation from year to year. Is we take a look at the strategic plan, the expenditure plan, and we evaluate the process, and we work with all of your individual cities to develop a plan and implement everything through the Measure J program. The program allocations are based off of percentages of sales tax revenue collected annually. And with that, we collect money in previous years. And those previous years, it takes a while to the cities and the authority to identify the projects. They come to the board, they ask for resolutions for funding, and we allocate funds. And as you know, your cities, it'll take several years, maybe sometimes you can do it within a year to fund these projects. So there's a lot of fluctuation. And with our capital projects, there's a lot of external funding and grant funding. And so we'll go through that through this presentation on where all the revenues come from, where all the major adjustments are at mid-year. And as we're speaking about this mid-year, we've already kicked off our budget for next fiscal year, and the staff is doing this again while it's all fresh. So if we take a look and we go back a year, almost a year, the COVID-19 pandemic, we were thinking sales tax revenues were going to be a little bit the same as what we saw in 2008 and 9. So we took a big swing and you know, we were trying to be ultra conservative, and we reduced the budget for last fiscal year to 80.5 million. And we came in at 93.5 million. So we were all surprised, all of the cities as well, how well sales tax did during this pandemic. So with that, as you know, we work with HDL. We get quarterly reports. We just delivered something to you back in the month of February. We're up 2.8% year over year for that. But as you know, there's a delay in when we get payments. And just a couple weeks ago, we were thinking our sales tax budget was going to be about 93.5 million. But based off of the actuals we've seen, I went ahead and I increased our budget to $95 million for this fiscal year. So when working with HDL, we were looking at this fiscal year and the strong sales tax, and I'll have the next first 6 months of data to give to you. It won't be ready until beginning of April, but by the time it gets to the APC committee and the board, that'll be probably the May presentation. But right now, for just 6 months, we have $52.5 million. So typically in the last 6 months of the year, we do anywhere from $42 to $45 million. So we should have a really safe budget estimate of $95 million. And again, it's just not me making some conservative effort. I work extensively with HDL. We take a look at these things, and we're always looking into the future as well. A takeaway from here is we're looking at maybe a 4.2% after this year increase, and maybe a 3.5% increase for next year. But again, everything is month to month, day to day, as we look at the economic changes, the unemployment rates, and how everybody's being affected in just Contra Costa, as well as the state and throughout the nation. So with that, the biggest numbers here is the sales tax revenue increase. So you can see we had a 76.5 million projection, but then again, that was a projection we made in May of 2020. And we were pleasantly surprised. I was going to adjust the budget on that earlier in the year, but when we still weren't sure where we were going, how we were going to do with everybody getting their shots and returning back to work. So I wanted to wait until we had some more concrete numbers. And with that, we've adjusted the sales tax revenues up $18.5 million to 95. As you can see, we got about $70 million in federal, state, and local revenues. Again, the largest part of that is about, I'll go through that in some other slides, is about $67 million for our capital projects. We have the large projects, which are the ones we keep talking about, is the 680 HOV lane. We've got the 680 Highway 4, and we're able to expedite some of the construction last year. And so there's some reductions in there as well for this. And there's also some reductions down below in the project expenditure section that is directly tied to some of these items. And so our investment income, as we all know, we had some strong interest earnings. And so our investments had we bought investments 2 to 3 years ago. And so interest rates were much higher back then. We had some market value income due to some bonds. We drew down on some of our investments to pay for some of our capital. We were able in the prior fiscal year to have some higher investment earnings. And with the close to zero interest rates and the 1% we're getting on our investments, I reduced it to about $838,000. Other sources. Other sources is when we look at the money we've collected over several years for the capital program, the TLC program, the ped bike program, and then as we start, and then also we have some BART projects as well. And so when we fund these programs, and it's an expenditure expectation in this fiscal year. It's not for the sales tax revenue we collected this year, it's for the sales tax we've collected in the prior year since 2008. So as we look at the expenditures down here, we have the project section. We'll go into that in a couple slides. We made some adjustments. All of the staff in the project, Ivan, Hisham, Stephanie, they all have a large section of projects in there. They reviewed all the contracts with their consultants, and we make a projection between now and the end of the fiscal year, which is June. The program section, you can see that increase is 2.7. Again, there's a lot of return to source funds in there, the bus agencies, which is a percentage of our sales tax revenues we receive on an annual basis. The planning section, they had an adjustment in there. They took a look at all of their contracts and made some small adjustments. In the administrative section, I made some adjustments in there. I'll talk about those later. But there is a good reduction associated with the salaries and benefits, and we'll get to that a little later in the presentation. Debt service is going to remain the same, and we'll discuss that on the next couple slides as well. So as we pretty much covered the sales tax revenues, you can see back in the prior fiscal year of 2018, 2019, there was a big jump of about 6.3%, and then we dropped down to $93.5 million. So if many of you remember from your agencies, there was a big increase in 2019. California Department of Tax and Finance, they changed the way people do their sales tax. We collected a little extra, and then there was a delay that happened in some of the process. So that's why it jumped up to about $96 million. In 2020, we ended the year really strong at $93.5 million. Again, we thought the numbers were going to come to 76.5. We're going to increase it to 95. So if you look at the actual 2020 to what we're projecting this year at 95, it's going to be a 1.6% increase. Again, we've already collected $52.5 million for 6 months of revenue. Here we go to the capital projects, which is on the expenditure side, they make up about 42% of all of the expenditures. Here we have some RM2 funds. The RM3 funds was an earmark for the McCollum Trail. That's not going to happen this year. So that's part of the reduction in there. We have the BATA funds. It's all, again, timing of reimbursements for the capital projects. Federal, state, STIP, ECRFA funds that we're going to be receiving. And then there's some other funding in there. Other funding, the 8.7 in there, there's a large portion of funds in there. I think it's about $6.9 million from the Tri-Valley Transportation Commission. Those are some fees that are, I think, going to go to the 680 project. And then also besides the capital program, we have planning, we have the congestion management, we have some PDA funding in there. We get some federal surface transportation for the CMA program for delivering all of the studies. We also have some PPM, the state planning programming monitoring, that pays for $355,000. That covers a lot of staff time that's allocated to that. So sometimes in years past, we've got 600,000, 700,000, and I think the prior year we had 0. So this year we've got 355,000. So when we get those funds, we allocate staff time to utilize those funds. The local agencies, they pay for part of the CMA program. So the estimate right now, based off of external funding in our current projects, it might be about 130,000. We also collect money from the TFCA program, the motor vehicle registration. That's about $1.7 million, and that's allocated out. Another special project that Ivan's working on is the city of San Ramon for the Iron Horse Trail, based on what our estimate on the construction and the planning side and different things is about $1.2 million in expenditures. So we have a revenue to offset that as well. And so as we were talking about the capital program, we have $70.2 million, and that's the capital projects, just our capital projects through our expenditure plan, CIP projects 1 through 9, which is Caldecott Fourth Bore. There's some landscaping work doing there. And then we also have some BART projects we're finishing up, the SR4 East widening, the East County corridors, I-680, the Innovate 680 program. So as you go down the list, you can see from each funding source which programs it's paying for, what the total costs are. And if you're looking for something on here that looks different from a regular budget on the capital program, as you know, these are multi-year projects. And so it looks like we have $20 million budgeted. And then you see on the far right, negative 8.7. And so what that means is last year we get billed by the construction teams for doing these projects. And then it takes 2 to 3 months for us to process the reimbursements and get the reimbursements out to the state, to the MTC, to the local agencies, and get some funding. And what'll happen is it's a timing of revenue and expenditures, and therefore included in that other funding is the TVTC, is $6.5 million is in there. And so that's what makes it a negative 8.7. So another way to look at it is the Measure J program fronts the money, we seek reimbursement, and that would be why that would be a negative $8 million at that point. And so as we look at the changes for the CIP projects, you can see how staff has gone through all of these individual projects. They take a look at all of them. They work with their consultants again. It's a huge effort. It's a big ask for all of our staff and our consultants, and I thank them very much for working very hard on this. And we do our best to give you a snapshot of what's happening in the 12-month period that we're budgeting for. You can see we're down 25 million. You can see some of the biggest hits on there is a reduction of $17.2 million on the I-680 corridor. You can see a reduction on the I-680 SR4 interchange. Ivan would be the best one to tell you on this if we have questions at the end, but it's a timing. They were able to move a little quicker last year. They've reduced what they have left to do, and that's where you would see some of the reductions on that side as well. So when we're looking at the other sections, besides the capital projects, we have the administration program section. So the salaries and benefits, and per the strategic plan and per Measure J, we're only supposed to use about 1% on administration. And so the salaries and benefits related to the staff that are allocated at a portion of their salaries to that individual section is $704,000, and that represents about 0.75%. Also in the administrative section, we have overhead costs. So due to COVID, there's a combination of adjustments that are made to services, including a decreased office supplies. It's not just paper, it's just a lot of things that we're buying during the fiscal year. So I've reduced that $25,000. Due to everybody doing the online meetings, nobody's flying to Washington for meetings and other items. So I've reduced the travel budget by about $60,000. And we're not hosting any meetings. We're not having any meetings inside the office. So I've reduced the food, $12,500. And then I've also offset some of the costs. I'm replacing a server for information systems inside the office. That's approximately $25,000 to $30,000. So I increased the budget $30,000 for that. And then the authority-wide salaries and benefits, pension, post-employment, and worker comps rates, that's all in there. And so there's a total reduction of $300,000. As you know, we promoted Tim to the executive director. We removed Randy. We did not backfill immediately Tim's position. There's some other adjustments on current staff that's with CCTA. But one of the bigger numbers in there is the OPEB retiree benefit payments for the authority. It was reduced to $100,000. I'm going to give a brief overview on that. I will be back to the board to give a presentation. I've reached out every 2 years. We're supposed to do an actuary. We take a look at everybody that works for the authority, just like on our pension side, and we figure out what our liabilities are. And when I presented the CAFR to you, I was able to tell you we're $420,000 overfunded for 2019 because it's always 1 year behind on the reporting on the CAFR. There's been some great interest rate returns. We continue to contribute 9.9% on our retirees on the OPEB side. And so we've reached a point that since we started contributing in 2008 to the OPEB side, we're overfunded, and it's time to pump the brakes a little bit, take a look at what we're doing. I've reduced our payments from 9.9% to 2%. And so with that, that's going to give us $100,000 savings. On the program side, it's increased $2.7 million. The expenditures are based on a percentage of Measure J allocations, which we discussed. We pay the ferry service, the bus services, TLC, Ped Bike, paratransit. We also have the return to source, which is about 20%. That's about $19 million to the cities. And then several other program budgets were revised to reflect current commitments. The planning division, as we discussed, they went through and they reviewed all of their commitments, and they were able to make some adjustments. And then again, in here, there's an allocation of staff time that gets spread to all the different departments that people work on. And so that's down about $108,000. And then debt service remains the same. Later in the year, last year, during this fiscal year, we need to get out to the market and look at our floating rate notes, our swap. I have a kickoff meeting this afternoon looking at what we're going to be doing and how we're going to approach this. We'll be back to the board, hopefully May at the latest, with our plan. We will work with the APC committee to determine the right action plan and take it to the board of what our next steps will be and how we'll move forward. So our debt service, we projected to be $41.9 million. There's no changes there on our debt service at the moment. So with that, I seek approval for us to push this to the authority board and make the recommended budget adjustments, decreasing the budget from 2.5 million to 182 million, which reflects a decrease of 23 million. If any of you have any questions, I welcome them. And there's also authority staff here to answer some project specifics if you have it, or I'll do my best.
Brian, thank you so much. Could I ask you to, thank you, to go back to that. Well done. Obviously, nobody can complain about seeing us go from 75.5 million or 76.5 million up to 95. And that still has a little bit of a conservative hedge on it, given the range that we're seeing for sales tax. And I think all of us cities are seeing that as well. Any questions of Brian? Yeah, Tom?
I was just curious, if you collect 54 million in sales tax in 6 months, why wouldn't you collect 108 million in 12 months?
That's a great question. And with sales tax, it's depending on the time of year. So, many of you and many of your friends, they may start their holiday shopping in October, and some people always do it in December. So there's a fluctuation of different things that happen. And then also, there's so many different factors. I can't cover it all right here, but October through December is always our highest year, our highest quarter in the fiscal year. But it's always a fluctuation based off of consumer spending. Springtime may more travel. There's so many different things that are there. Obviously, we can't travel now, but it's just a fluctuation of consumer spending habits.
Great, thanks, Brian. Any other questions, comments? Christina, is there anybody, any comments we received or anybody in our audience who would like to comment?
I do not see any hands raised, so no, we have no comments.
Okay, great. Brian, again, thank you. Thank you for your strong advocacy role, for the oversight, and for the absolute dedication to do this right and present us with accurate, conservative numbers that always have guided us well. So thank you. So that takes.
I was going to say I'll move approval.
Thank you. Second?
Second, Geringer.
So first by Nowak, second by Geringer. Any further comments? Seeing none, Christina, will you call the roll, please?
Yes. Member Butt?
Yes.
Member Geringer?
Aye.
Member Thorpe?
Aye.
Chair Noah or Vice Chair Noah
Yes.
and Chair Arnrich.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. And Brian, we look forward to seeing you at the full authority meeting. Okay, this will take us to our last regular agenda item. This is item 5D, the Safe and Seamless Mobility Quick Strike Program for the project nominations. And Hisham is going to lead us off on this. Hisham, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Hopefully you can hear me well. I don't have a PowerPoint, so I'll try to keep this concise and quick. Last month, the Authority Board approved the ranked list of remaining Measure J projects in the strategic plan and the TLC pit bike programming documents. As you recall, we had to rank the projects in order to prepare for potential declines in our revenues due to COVID-19. And that will basically allow us to direct our limited Measure J funds in a way that leverage the most in state and federal money. Staff presented two, staff presented two lists to you at the time. A list of 32 locally sponsored projects and another for 11 authority managed projects. And as you recall, the local list had 32 projects that needed $43 million in Measure J funds, and you approved resuming Measure J appropriations for the top 14 projects on that list. But you continued the suspension of Measure J appropriations to the remaining 18 until you adopt a new long-range revenue forecast. As part of your approval, you indicated that you're going to give the remaining projects on these lists a higher priority for future state and federal funds. We now have such an opportunity to fund some of the remaining 18 local projects with federal money. MTC adopted the guidelines on how to program additional federal money they got in late January. They call it the Safe and Seamless Mobility Quick Strike Program. Our share of that is about $7 million, but there is really no guarantee that we will get it, since MTC will be evaluating and selecting the projects. This type of project is new. This type of process is new, since in the past, MTC will issue the guidelines, tell us what our share is, and then let CCTA select the project that best meet the criteria. They're not doing this anymore in order to comply with an FHWA audit that criticized the way, the old way of doing business, where things were done by formula. FHWA wanted, the Federal Highway Administration wanted basically the best projects to be funded, no matter where they are located. To improve our chances of getting our share, we really need to submit more than our share of $7 million in funding requests. So as a first step, we reviewed all the remaining 18 projects on the ranked list and contacted the sponsors to determine if their projects are eligible and they can meet the strict MTC requirements imposed in these guidelines. The guidelines, in summary, basically limits the type of projects that can be funded through the pit bike improvements, as well as projects that improve transit access. There is a very strict deadline to obligate the funds for constructions. These projects must advertise for construction bid by September 2022. And if you need more details about the requirements, they're included in attachment P in your staff, in the staff report. In terms of the schedule, we need to submit our nomination by March 30th. So that really doesn't give us any time to be issuing calls for projects at this time. And they are expected to approve the final list at their June meeting. After working with the project sponsors over the past month, we identified 6 projects on the ranked list that meet the criteria and the guidelines. And in order to help improve our chances, we also looked at the prior calls for projects that we issued for OBAG and identified 2 other projects that were not funded at the time, just because we didn't have enough money. MTC also asked us to nominate the I-580 westbound general purpose lane conversion in Richmond as a candidate. That project improves transit access to the Richmond Santa Fe Bridge. That's a total of 9 projects requesting about $23.5 million in funding, which should put us in a good position to get at least our share, hopefully more. But another reason we really should submit more than our share is because there is also a chance that MTC may use this list in the future to program additional SPP funds that we may get from the Corona Relief Bill, HR 133, even though no decisions has been made on that yet. But if it happens, that's another $8 to $9 million that CCTA could get through MTC. We are asking your approval today to nominate the projects that are shown in attachment A to MTC for the Quick Strike program. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Great, Hisham, thank you for that presentation. Also, just like to pass on a compliment to you and all the staff that, as you know, as we saw our revenues change and having to look at the long-term view of our agency and coming up with this list that was prioritized by matching funds being highest priority and stuff. Pretty impressed that as all of our agencies found out about that, the agreement was amazingly unanimous without a whole lot of dissension. So I think that speaks well for how it was presented, the depth, and how the analysis was done. So thank you for that. So any questions of Hisham for these project lists that are being nominated? Okay, seeing none. Christina, do we have any public comments or anybody raising their hand?
I see no public comments.
Okay, great. Do we have a motion? Teresa?
Move approval of the nominated projects included in attachment A.
Second.
And was that a second by Tom Butt?
Yes.
Okay, so a first by Teresa, a second by Tom. Any further comments? Seeing none. Christina, will you call the roll, please?
Yes. Member Butt?
Yes.
Member Geringer?
Yes.
Member Thorpe?
Aye.
Vice Chair Nowak?
Yes.
And Chair Arnrich?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you, everybody. This takes us to item number 6, which is correspondence and communication. You can see in our packet there a few things. Item 7, I have no comments except to say thank you as the chair. Thank you for that, and congratulations to Sue. And thanks again to Tom for your leadership. Any comments from commissioners? Seeing none, our executive director, Tim, any comments?
Just want to echo your thoughts, Chair Arnrich. Appreciate your leadership here in this meeting and your future leadership this year on APC. And thank you, Committee Member Butt, for your leadership over the past year, especially with the dynamics of COVID and the virtual meetings. And it's been such an interesting year transitioning to these virtual meetings. So really appreciate it. And so looking forward to working with all of you this year. And that concludes my comments.
Great. Thank you, Tim. Seeing no other business, that will take us to adjournment at 9:49. And thank you, everybody. And maybe we'll see you at the mayor's conference tonight. See you then. Thank you.
We will.
Thanks, Christina. Bye-bye.